When I started kayak fishing nearly 3 decades ago, I never realized at the time that there were a few others doing the same all across the country. As time went on, more and more people were being introduced to kayak fishing by these early pioneers. As I searched online in these early years, I was amazed at what others were catching from these little plastic craft we call kayaks. The Kayak Fishing Story will be told in a series of podcasts as we interview these legends and people who know them. We will progress from the early days to the kayak anglers of today as we piece together how kayak fishing became such a popular activity among outdoor enthusiasts.
Okay, we're here. I'll tell you what, guys, technology's great. We got a special show here tonight. I want to thank you all for joining us. And I know we're a couple minutes late. We had to get Dennis off the beach because, it's still daylight in California. Yeah, the crabs were crawling everywhere. And but we got him. We got him on, and he's here. But I got to tell you a couple things first. First of all, the modern day kayak fishing world has a lot of trails to it, and we're going to show you a trail tonight that's unbelievable. And we're kind of excited to have Mr. Dennis Spike from Northern California, and he's a true legend in the sport of kayak fishing. But first, I gotta bring on our co-host, and he's here somewhere. He had to shovel his way out of some snow. And I just want to tell you that he's a kayak angler himself out of Missouri, and I've come to respect and admire this man so much in the past couple of years that I've known him. And well, I'm going to bring him on here, and we'll get him going. There he is. Whoop. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. I'm a little late. There we go. There we go, Trey. How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you, buddy?
I'm good. I'm good. I had to go do my volunteering before this tonight, and now I'm here. But
My sister was just texting me. She was like, "Where's the show at? Why isn't it? Where are you guys going?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're getting it. We're getting it together. Thank God we're here right now." And Dennis came on, and
yeah, and my phone was beeping. Yeah. Hey, Dennis. Without further ado, let's just bring him on. Dennis is already going. So here he is, the man,
the one and only
Dennis Spike.
Hello, everybody. You throw that L word around pretty easy there, Marty, and it makes me blush every time.
Yeah.
I've just, like you, been around a long, long time. Yeah. And I wanted to tell you, first I want to thank you for bringing me on. You didn't know this going into it. Marty found out today. Next month is what I consider the 30-year anniversary of the start of the modern era of kayak fishing. And that's exactly what you call it. We come from the Alouettes, the Inuits, the Badarkas, the traditional hunters and gatherers that historically and in ancient times used kayaks.
Yeah.
And we're doing the same thing home and bringing food home to our families, touching base with nature, and really tying into what is the essence of kayak fishing. Now, it started 30 years ago. Marty, I'm rambling. Okay?
Absolutely. No,
It started 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But that's that modern era. That was that peanut butter and chocolate hit that anglers got when they saw cheap plastic kayaks.
Yeah.
And I have gone through before I go to that, I wanted to say something. And that is, thank you guys for bringing me on. I think that more than a nice opportunity to reach anglers, which is what I've been doing for 30 years, your concept of the kayak fishing story, I think the sport is a solid generation old right now, and it's the perfect time to tell it.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited. I'm really honored to be in the esteemed company of just a handful of other pioneers that you're featuring.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to mention a few things, and I guess we don't have much of a time limit here, so I'm going to do some storytelling to get it all out.
Yeah, you go for it.
But there are a lot of pioneers in the sport. It was a concerted effort by people with a passion to grow something that changed a hobby for everybody into a lifestyle pursuit. And the whole thing about kayak fishing, I noticed right away, was I was I was guiding people onto the water in kayaks whose family hated their fishing. It took a day away. It took time away. It cost money. Half of them had motorboats. And all of a sudden they get in the kayaks and there's some sense of serenity that comes over the family, and they're eager and support whoever's fishing in the family. And a lot of time it becomes a family affair. And Marty and I were talking about food earlier, just touched on it, but it's always around food and fishing. And when you can have your family come to the beach for a picnic when you get off the water, it's just another great thing to do. You guys gave me I was going to go the pioneers. A few people I want to mention right out of the chute. And I'm going to tell you the story how this all got started with me anyway. And you guys know Ken Daubert, the author of Kayak Fishing: The Revolution.
Yeah.
Ken definitely gets a mention. He reached more people in more places, coast to coast, with that book, and was truly a sweet guy and the co-inventor of the banjo minnow. Doug Olander from Sport Fishing Magazine. You know, I don't know, it's really cool that I'm talking to two guys who, one's a legend in the sport and the other's quick on the way. One in Nebraska and one in Missouri. Yeah. That's how big the sport of kayak fishing has gotten. And Marty, you have a lot to do with that. But we live in different worlds. Mine is a salty coastal fishery, and a whole different mindset. And yours is from 100 miles west to 3,000 miles east. And it encompasses so much. And we've seen the sport grow from what I see. Are you still there, boys?
Yes.
A little early. Oh, bear with me. A little early for a mic drop there. Back in business.
Okay.
That's always when I lose my spot. When I started kayak fishing, I didn't want a boat. I couldn't afford a boat at the time, a motorboat. There was a lot of pressure on the landings. We were really starting to see access limited, coastal access to get in the water, which is something we see here on the Sonoma coast and all up and down the coast. And I also didn't want to have to devote a whole day to going fishing. I saw that whether I took a charter or the party boats, head boats, or went on my own boat, that I had to take the whole day. It took time to get to the landing. It took time to motor from the landing to the fishing spots, get precious little time fishing, and then turn around and have to do the whole thing. So I might as well jump into it. You had a couple of questions on what inspired me.
Yeah, but hey, Dennis, first of all, your forehead's great, but if you could back up a little bit, we could see your whole head. There you go. If you can,
I want to see that beard. That's a salty beard right there, buddy.
I was just going to say the words.
The camera adds 200 pounds and a lot of whiteness to the hair.
So you said Sonoma Coast are you close to like Bodega Bay?
That's my home port.
Best clam chowder on the West Coast right there.
It's hard to argue. On the West Coast, you got it.
I said West Coast.
So Dennis,
I'm going to fix this in a minute.
Okay. Hey, Dennis, let's take a quick
break. If I just did something like that.
Yeah, that's perfect. I want to take a quick break, though, and I want to thank our sponsors who are helping us with getting these episodes out there. And number one is up there in the right corner would be Little Miami Outfitters with Brandon Palmer, who's incredible rods he's making, and they're becoming very popular because they're really good. Chad Hoover with KBF, and Dwayne Wally, Attorney X. Those guys are legends themselves as well. And Brandon Palmer out of Ohio is up and coming with his rod business. And of course, we want to my own company, Kayak Jack Outdoors. But Dennis, this already, we just want to go sit around a campfire and listen to you all night. That's how good you are.
I already want to go fishing with him, dude.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I checked in the flights today.
Yeah,
We'll see you.
we're coming next week.
Yeah.
We're coming next week, Dennis.
Yeah. Okay, Dennis. First question: What inspired you to even take a kayak out on the ocean? Because you hadn't seen anybody else, did you?
No, I hadn't even thought about it, but there were other people out there.
Okay.
And from San Diego all the way up the coast.
Yeah.
My cousin grew up in Canton, Ohio. The Spikes are from Ohio, and he called me, and he moved first to Sherman Oaks to LA, got into the film business, and then he moved to Malibu, the middle class part of Malibu. That's and when I as a kid, I used to go spend a summer and then time in Ohio, and I was always fishing. And in Canton, it's not like California where everything is fenced off and you got little tiny lots and yards in a lot of neighborhoods. There, they were big parcels. Nobody had a fence in the neighborhood, and every third or fourth property is a lake or a pond. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. And I caught my first large and smallmouth bass out of those ponds when I was like 13. Come to be near an adulthood or young adults, Howie moves out to California, takes a job with George Lucas, tearing down sets, ends up building his way up. And he made our kayak fishing DVD, our instructional video. Anyway, he moved to Malibu, and he calls me up one day and he says, "Hey, Denny, I just picked up a cheap used plastic kayak and I'm going to fish with it." So I got on the Recycler, which was the print version of Craigslist. And you remember that, Marty?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I found a used Scupper Classic. And I bought that thing. And
what'd you pay for it?
It was probably $100.
Yeah.
And his was a boat called the Dimension Solo. It looks like a big white urinal laid on its back. And it has no scuppers. It's really deep cockpit. Yeah. So when it would slop over the side, he had to kick his feet against the front and the water would come shooting. And I swear to you, he never bought another kayak. This guy has had epic catches in that boat.
Wow.
He has no place to store it. It's another, when we get to sharks, I'll tell you that story.
Okay.
Howie calls me, says, "I bought this cheap plastic kayak." I immediately bought one. We threw a couple rod holders on these boats, grabbed a net, grabbed a rod, and after the first trip, a few rods, strapped them to the side, and basically taught ourselves how not to ruin and lose our gear.
Yeah.
Balance was not a problem. Yeah. It's a stable platform, and it worked out great. We fished together for at least a couple of years. I think we started around 91. But that's ballparking it. We were trying to figure it out today.
Yeah.
And in 94, I'm reading Pacific Fisherman magazine. And I had been fishing at Point Doom, which is the top of the prominence of the Santa Monica Bay, and right at the base of Zuma Beach. And it's an interesting area. You have a canyon out front, only a few hundred yards away, that drops down 700 to 1,000 feet. But the shore break there is like having a barn door drop on your head. And it can be a sharky area given its geography. Once again, I think we're going to go right here for a minute.
This is great because you know what? Us old school guys, we don't have tripods and all this other.
I will be more prepared ever given the opportunity.
So was that white
We got
kayak you were
wait,
in?
wait a minute. We got to have you back up so we can see you. That's right now. It's like you're peeking over a fence.
Reminds me of like what's that? Tool
Yeah,
Time?
that show where they were. I don't know the name of that show, but
Bear
What was
with
the
me.
guy's name?
oh man,
I'm trying to get this on big screen.
that's all right. You know, we got a lot of people. And by the way, you guys that are out there, feel free to put some questions up there for later that we can maybe Dennis can answer for you.
The technical difficulties, you guys.
Oh, we had them before we went on tonight, so yeah, we get it. We still have your nose upward. There you go. There you go. Almost. That's it. That's it.
My screen's about the size of a postage stamp because I've got all the comments below it.
Yeah. Well, you can back up and just talk. It's okay.
If you do, you lose everything.
No, you don't.
All right, we're going. You know, nothing has ever been fixed without duct tape. And I am official.
Out there enjoying this.
I want to apologize.
He's got the duct tape. Literally, I just heard it.
Here it is, Dorman Huey. It was tool time with Mr. Wilson.
That's it.
All right, the only thing I need you guys
Kayak
before I
fishing
do
time
this,
with Will Spike.
I need to figure out how to get rid of the comment section. And
Don't worry about it. We can. Don't worry. We can see you if you back up.
All right.
But you're
So I'll treat it like a phone call here. A little angle on that.
We don't practice stuff, you guys. There's a lot of tool times. Come on, this is it. Brandon Palmer's loving it.
What do you think of that?
That's great. We can see your beard now.
That's
I
it.
see nothing, but I can talk to you.
Hey, when Marty said this dude is really cool, this dude is super salty, and the first thing you do is bust out duct tape, man, you have lived up to my expectations right now.
Michelle's in the other room cracking up.
You keep getting closer, though, Dennis. You got to back up.
I keep adjusting the technical equipment.
Just let it
that's
sit
great.
there. Okay. All right.
So to make this longest story shorter, I had been fishing for my kayak for a few years at least, and my issue came in the. I realized that after 5 years, while this wasn't the glossiest, most professionally written fishing magazine, it was. What are you guys cracking up at?
Tyler Alexander said this is how his first kayak fishing trip went.
He must have been there.
Oh, that's
Dennis,
funny.
keep going, man. You're
Crying.
You're telling it. Keep telling it, brother. Keep telling it.
So, I've been fishing all my life. I've had the opportunity to interview a lot of people and pop that question, what got you fishing? Invariably, it's, well, my dad. But with me, it was my mom.
Really?
And
Wow.
I don't know where she got it from, but when in the 60s, my dad was working hard, my mom was working hard, and they didn't have, it was I'd say a lower middle class situation. They struggled. And my mom saw fishing as what I came to be my whole mantra for what I do in fishing. And that is a wholesome family activity and a traditional American pastime. Mm-hmm. And it was affordable. We went to Balboa Pier. We'd take a motel overnight and fish the wharf at night. We'd fish Santa Monica Pier, Malibu Pier. And it was just a great, and it hooked me. It absolutely hooked me. So I fished all my life. And when I started fishing the kayak, I really got deep into Pacific Fisherman magazine, and it had a good educational editorial to it. And after about 5 years, I realized that this magazine has brought everything I've learned about fishing together and taught me more. And it was just like an awakening moment. The next issue that came in the mail had a cover story on float tubing in your kayak in the ocean. Now, since I've been in the kayak fishing business, I've met a lot of guys who thought they had a lot of good ideas. And this one, I just had this vision in my head of 200 guys running to Academy, buying float tubes and running out to the beach, and 200 guys getting picked up by a current and swept away while their little flippers did nothing. And I called the magazine and I just asked the question, do you have any interest in kayak fishing? I didn't mention the float tubes or anything. And the woman answered the phone, said, oh, we were really interested in it. We're very excited about it, but we couldn't find anybody with enough information. Well, Howie and I had been fishing the kayaks for years by then. And just in sunglasses alone, we had lost easily $1,000, let alone the reels that we sanded, the rods we broke, stuff we dropped in the water. And I said, I think so. Actually, I didn't say anything like that. I got a call back from the editor publisher, which turned out to be this woman's son. It was a family publication. And we talked for about an hour and a half, and he was thrilled about the idea of kayak fishing. And he asked me at the end of the conversation if I was capable of writing an article for his magazine. And I thought if I wrote it like I talked it, I could do that. And it turned out that I wrote it, and then I rewrote it about 10 times before I submitted it. And it's still hard to read now, the first kayak fishing thing I ever wrote. But it helped a lot of people get into the sport. And it was that first article in 1995. February of 1995, it was published. And that's how I got started in kayak fishing. Pete Barana, the editor publisher, Barana family and they were just a printing family who would buy a magazine for every special interest their kids got into as they were growing up. They were into motorized, remote controlled cars and stuff. They bought a magazine about it. The kids got into fishing. They bought California Angler and then converted it to Pacific Fisherman. It was a well-known title. And then they got out of the fishing magazine. The kids as adults, got into horse racing. So they published Arabian Racing News or something. And I just happened to be once again in the right place at the right time. And when the first article came out, I got a call from the magazine that says they were at the Fred Hall Fishing and Tackle Show. Not only the first fishing show in the United States that was nearing 50 years at the time, but one of the biggest. I had never been to a fishing show, not a real fishing show anyway. And I get a call. When the first article came out, there was a buzz about it in the industry. People were talking about it. And I just heard that through the magazine. But it came out to the subscribers days before the Fred Hall show opened in Long Beach. And it didn't go on the news shelves and into the stores for a couple weeks after that show. So I had no intention of going to the fishing show. I didn't know much about it. And I get a call from the magazine saying, we're at the show and you have to come down here. I'm like, what do you mean I have to come down there? They go, people are asking for you. I'm like, yeah. That's awesome. So I go down there and there are thousands of people. I walk into the convention center. There are thousands of people going through past hundreds and hundreds of booths all about fishing. I didn't know this existed. By the time I got over, and the article I wrote was basically a kayak fishing 101, boat paddle, PFD, rod landing net, your license.
Yeah.
Back then, a whistle. Yeah. Now it's phone, flares, radio.
Yeah.
Um,
Now the word is you showed up barefoot. Is that true?
Well, I used to have a tan that went down to about 4 inches above my ankles.
Yeah.
And then I had white feet in every photo. I wasn't wearing booties in.
Yeah.
I went down to the show, and I didn't know that at fishing shows, people were renewing their subscriptions to the magazine. And the magazine had a very big following. And I sat in the back of the booth. Nobody knew who I was. And I watched people walking up to the booth to renew their subscription I gave him a photo of my cousin kneeling in front of his kayak with a nice California halibut and a wave breaking behind his head on Zuma Beach. And he's a director. He directs television and stuff. And so he called the shot, posed for it, kept turning around, waiting for the wave to break. He got a good shot. I just pressed the button. And I think it was on one of those throwaway Instamatic cameras. And no, I must use something slightly better than that. We got him on the cover. Here are people walking up to that booth, pointing at my cousin holding this halibut, and just with glazed eyes telling the magazine, I want to see more of this. And it was obvious there was something there. There was a big buzz. It all happened that 1 week at that show. There was a big buzz. You guys familiar with Western Outdoor News? It's a West Coast fishing and hunting newspaper. They used to have 2 publications, the newspaper and a magazine, and it has a big readership, had a very big readership. They also have a very big presence in the sport on the West Coast. Okay. The editor, Pat McDonald, he grasped kayak fishing. Fred Hall and Bart Hall, who ran the Hall shows, they were head over heels.
Hey, Dennis, real quick. I got the picture of the guy on the cover of Pacific Magazine on the show right now. Who is that?
We're not friends. We're cousins, first cousins.
Yeah,
that's my cousin Howie, who moved out from Canton. Okay. And that's my fishing partner. Okay. And we were fishing for years, and then it turned into this. And yeah. So that was the first article that was ever printed, and they gave it the cover. And it's a nice beach. We can't fish that beach anymore. It's been closed to the Marine Life Protection Act, as have been many of the fisheries around here have been narrowed down.
And that's that same white kayak that you were talking about before, the one that he's next to?
Solo, the Dimension Solo. You guys are encouraging me to set up my studio again. I'm going to have to get real with all of this. If you ever do another series, have me back.
Well, we got to have you back on and talk about some other stuff, because we want to compare, because, like a lot of people don't know, they think I'm from Nebraska, but I grew up in Southern California, and we're the same age. So we were probably doing some of the same things along the beaches there, but didn't even know each other.
There's no doubt about it. Yeah. And going on the same boats.
Yeah. Yeah. Deep sea.
And I hitchhiked to California, but it wasn't to fish.
Right.
That's another story too, Greg. So you were into the magazine and so forth. So you were an acupuncturist, right? During this time?
I was. I had to finish one thing really quick.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
When that first week, when the sport literally exploded, it got the attention of a lot of people who never get credit as part of that branch of pioneers of the sport. There was Pat McDonald from Western Outdoor News. There was the Hall family, and especially Bart Hall from the Fred Hall fishing shows. There was Pete Gray from the Let's Talk Hookup radio shows. You familiar with that one, Scott?
Marty.
Marty.
No.
Guys. All
I
right.
feel like I'm in a nightclub.
Hilarious.
You know what they say, just use more. You
No,
guys,
but
I'm going to take a techno break here. I'll be right back with you.
He's getting his duct tape. But yeah, so the Pacific Coast really, I don't know if it started first on the East Coast or the West Coast. That's what I've always wondered.
What started?
Kayak fishing.
It started on both of them. Okay, as far as guys fishing
Yeah.
kayaks,
Yeah.
both coasts.
And it's like I said,
You've had
yeah.
people fishing for reds from the Gulf all the way around.
Yeah.
You've had people fishing for stripers from the first guy who saw a kayak and
Yeah.
said, "Hey, how come I'm not fishing in that?" So I think that was pretty simultaneous. Industry wise, press wise, publicity wise,
Yeah.
it got its start that week. Nobody had written anything. Nobody had done a tournament, had a show, talked about it, got a guide license. I take that back. You guys probably know who the first kayak fishing guide was.
Dean Thomas. No, Jim
Almost.
Salmons. Jim Salmons?
Not even close.
Really?
I always thought it was Marty
Forrest
Hughes, but
Gump.
I'm learning stuff right now. So
The first kayak fishing guide was Forrest Gump.
what?
You know Jimbo Meader?
No.
All right. So Jimbo Meader worked for Native Kayaks, and he was more of a personality with them, but publicly. I don't know what his real capacity was. But I was talking to somebody one day. It might have been Chad. I don't know. And he said, I don't remember. He said, "Well, you know who Jimbo is."
Yeah, Chad just mentioned him. Jimbo Madure.
Jimbo Meader. Yeah,
Yeah, okay. All right.
Jimbo, his best friend, wrote the book Forrest Gump about Jimbo and his other buddy.
Huh.
They were the character base. And Jimbo was a runner, like the movie.
Uh-huh.
He wasn't a shrimp fisherman, but he was a fish farmer in Georgia.
Oh, wow.
And when you talk to him, it's like talking to Hanks's character.
Huh.
And so after the fishing thing, I finally got to talk to him and meet him. It was awesome. After he was farming fish, he got his his charter boat license, his guide license. And he was fishing, I would think it's around Mobile, taking people out for reds. But there were areas that he saw, and this was in, I want to say, the 80s. There were areas that he saw that he couldn't get his boat into, where he saw fish tailing as big as bigger than he'd ever seen.
Huh.
And the plastic kayaks had just come out, and he got a hold of them, and he started guiding people on kayaks.
Wow.
Jimbo is the first kayak fishing guide.
Wow. Is he still alive today?
Yeah.
So we can get a hold of him.
I called him one time and I didn't get a call back from.
Okay, we got to you got to help us get him. We got to get the very first guide. I mean,
I'll try to touch base.
Okay, cool.
I'll reach out. It's an interesting thing. So one of your questions got my attention, and it started with, "It has been claimed." Like I said, I'm a very lucky guy. I was in the right place at the right time. And I have, to my credit, a lot of firsts. I was the first kayak fishing guide to get a guide license for that purpose. I'm not aware of anyone who's done it longer, while many have claimed. But I got my first guide license in 1995, right around February, right after that show. And I scheduled the first kayak fishing tournament, and funny, for early in the sport, I had constant competition every step of the way. So after I scheduled the first kayak fishing tournament, another guy promoted his kayak fishing derby, and he was a known guy who had a tackle shop and stuff. And my tournament got postponed due to rain, due to coastal conditions. So this guy ended up pulling his tournament, his derby, off first. And a few writers have declined to give me credit because his derby went off before my tournament.
Okay, so
however, they never gave him credit for conducting that tournament and giving the first prize to the guy who caught a silver salmon on his kayak in the ocean.
Wow.
They didn't really give him credit because it was an illegal fish.
Oh. So what was the tournament? What fish were they going for in the tournaments up there?
They should have been fishing for calico bass, sand bass, maybe a few rockfish like lingcod, yellowtail. My tournament went off on the 3rd or 4th of November, just a few weeks after that. And everybody who weighed fish came in with yellowtail that had been eating 4 and 5 inch smelts. And we saw the birds working on the smelts. So then we always knew that when we saw that, we'd have yellowtail. But yeah, it was a very fun, cool, and successful event.
Wow.
And anyway, the point that I promoted the first kayak fishing tournament. Some of my other firsts aren't coming to mind right now, but
it's okay. We got questions for you, and we have a lot of people watching, Dennis. So you got quite a crowd out there.
Then I'll start to shut up and answer some questions.
What I want to ask you though is how much money did you charge for a tournament, and what were the prizes back then?
So I did probably 4 or 5 tournaments in Southern California between Ventura County and San Diego, with most of them being there. I think that I don't remember a lot of the particulars. I'm guessing that it was probably a $25 entry, that kind of ballpark, maybe $30 and maybe $35. Because now that I think about it, we always did a feed at our events. We catered and fed everybody at the end of the tournament before the awards ceremony. And I'm guessing now those first events were still in the 90s, the late 90s. And I'm guessing that the last events I did are about 8 years ago, between 8 and 12 years ago. I've been up here on the North Coast for almost 17 years now. And those were awesome. We were roasting pigs and smoking 5 briskets. And people were going out and catching fish. Lingcod and rockfish was most of what was being caught there. And I think those events were like a $65 ticket. I would go around to companies and get prizes. I had a few companies who would give me kayaks. At the very end, I had a company who said they'd give me kayaks, but then gave me an invoice instead. And during the period starting 15 years ago when I moved up here, I wasn't really interested in doing tournaments much because there were so many events going on. And I didn't like having my hand out, despite what a lot of people think through what they've seen me using. I never took any sponsorships. I did take advertising, and a lot of it was for trade out gear. A lot of that I turned into revenue, and a lot of it I used.
So was it by weight or by inches, your fish?
We did. So I had what I wanted more sustainable rules because we were fishing in the ocean. And just for an example, if you could take 10 fish, I didn't want people coming in with 10 fish. I had recently seen a dive tournament on the coast in one of the venues we did a tournament at down the road. And I think the limit at that time might have been more than 10 fish. But every one of these divers was going out and killing everything they shot, and then coming in with big game clips full of fish. And they were perches and sheep's head. And sheep's head is like the Nemo of the coast here.
Mhm.
You can walk up, say hello, then shoot it. And yes, it is delicious. But I also saw the population of sheep's head declining, and I'm sure that had there was a commercial impact there too.
Mhm.
But we got to represent something out here. So what I did with my tournaments is you had a 5 fish maximum that you could weigh in. Total weight of 5 fish would get you prizes, the top prizes, and heaviest fish. There was a 3 fish something in there, but it was basically you couldn't kill. And this was before anybody thought of catch and release. Nobody was doing fly fishing, and everybody was pretty bloodthirsty in the beginning.
Mhm.
Then again, we never killed any baby sharks, thresher sharks, and up here it's turned into a genre of fishing.
Do you remember what your biggest fish you had weighed in was? Like, do you remember, like, it could have been any tournament? Like, what fish would that have been?
Heaviest fish at any of my tournaments? There were no trophies, which I'm kind of glad about at this point. I would say halibuts in the 20-pound range. And up here, lingcods. I don't think we ever saw a 20-pound lingcod, but we saw many double-digit fish approaching that.
And what is a game clip? I know you just
A
mentioned
game clip, the diver's game clip, which is very popular in ocean kayak fishing. And it's like a giant safety pin.
Okay.
It's steel with a little plastic laminate handle over the stainless steel, and it opens like a big safety pin, and you just put your fish through the gill and hang them from the side of your boat. I don't, and you shouldn't, but a lot of people do. I do use a game clip to keep my fish together and keep them in or on my kayak.
So I'm sure we're going to talk about, in a minute, we're going to talk about maybe a shark. And I know Marty wants to be over that, but I just want to know, have you ever hooked into something, dude? And you're just like, I know I probably shouldn't bring this up because it could be something of just something like ginormous. Like, I would always thought like a whale or like a adult, like something huge, dude, that you're just like, man, I don't even want to see that thing, what's down there.
So right after, in the earlier, they're pioneers like Jeff Rhino Krieger. You know Rhino, Marty.
Oh yeah. He wrote articles.
Huh?
He wrote articles.
I got him on the cover of Pacific Fisherman, and wrote articles with him and about him. And he's a great friend and a great angler and a great guy. And he started catching thresher sharks, and like, I've got to do this. And it's like catching marlin, except they're sharks, and they got that tail. They jump out of the water. They greyhound. They're very sporting. And I guess I've watched Rhino catch many over 100-pound threshers. And if he's listening tonight, he can chime in and give us what his heavyweight is. But he taught me how to fish threshers. And today it's part of our guiding program up here in Bodega Bay. It's a seasonal fishery on the California coast. It's wonderful meat. Thresher shark is one of the 2 market sharks you would find with the fishmonger.
Okay.
And thresher, and it's a lot of fun. But again, it's not something. It's something you should read up on or go with a guide before you go out.
I want to mention that. What I want to mention, Dennis, is for those listening, a lot of the guys that are listening are probably freshwater here. There might be a few that are saltwater, but I want to say that I actually went on a thresher shark guided trip in a kayak, and I can tell you that it's an incredible experience.
Now, who was that with Jim?
Yeah, I was with Jim. Yeah.
We went
a couple miles out, and
that's that's a once in a lifetime thing, unless you're targeting them.
We were targeting them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I ended up with a big barracuda, and I had something that hit, but unfortunately, and I learned this, I had my drag set too tight. I couldn't get the rod out of the rod holder. I had something really big on.
One thing I've taught every when I started guiding, I didn't feel that I knew I wasn't a good enough fisherman to say, yeah, come on, I'm going to get you out on fish.
Yeah.
Somehow I did. But
Yeah.
I knew I could teach them how not to ruin and lose their gear, and how not to get a ticket. Because I don't know about your regions, but we have a whole police department who's looking at us, recreational anglers, to see if we're doing anything wrong. And just to give you an example, a guy went out without a landing net, which you're required to have a landing net, an 18-inch landing net on your kayak.
Mm-hmm.
He went out without one. The wardens came up to interview him on the water. His fine for that ticket was $425.
And is that because the sharks come up and try to eat the fish? You got to get them out quick, or what?
No, sharks are not an issue, man.
Okay.
we could talk sharks.
That's what we think about here in Missouri. We're just like, if I get on the ocean, I'm going to see a shark, and they're going to probably try to bite me. But no, you have to have a net on you?
Yes, the best answer I can give you is for the safe release of undersized fish.
Okay, one more thing, Dennis, is Joshua Booth from Missouri. He's asking, when you brought those fish in, I know you use fish bags now, but what did they use back then to haul their fish in? A stringer? What'd they do?
How do you store your fish on a kayak?
Yeah, when they were in tournaments, when you're in a tournament, how did they store them?
They'd either throw them on or in their boat, or they had a big dry bag with frozen bottles of water.
Okay.
Yeah, they were bringing these fish in dead.
Yeah. Okay. Do you guys?
So, most of the boats early on, Marty, you'll remember, you had very few kayaks to select for fishing, and none of them were fishing kayaks.
No, they were scuba diving kayaks.
They were they were indeed, and that's all Tim Niemeyer.
Yeah, because when I bought my second kayak, I got it out of Florida, and it was a scuba kayak that I bought. I had no idea, but it was
Aquaterra Prism.
No, it was a Wilderness Ride 135. Has a scuba tank rack in the back of it.
That was still in the 90s?
That was in the 90s, yeah.
I didn't remember that the ride went back that far.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't know it was for diving. Yeah, they were. They were looking for the diving market, which made a lot more sense in Florida than and the Southeast than it did on the West Coast.
It was right around the year 2000, I believe, is when I got it.
Yeah, but it made a lot more sense there than it did on the West Coast. And Niemeyer took Ocean Kayak to shows for 20 years without ever touching on fishing. And so we got most of these boats had a big front hatch and either a hatch behind you on the stern or
a tank well. Chad Hoover says a tank well.
Right. A tank well, which finally flattened out and became a decking area.
Yeah.
But so when I caught I had the record for the white sea bass.
Yeah, I remember that. Wasn't it over 100 pounds?
Huh?
Wasn't it over 100 pounds?
No, they don't get that big, that species. Well, not that anybody's landed.
No, I remember
you
holding one in the picture.
Bass records at about 94 pounds. Mine was 75 pounds. It was just a kayak fishing record, and it finally got broke 20 years later.
Wow.
But I stuffed that thing mostly into the kayak and just had the tail sticking out when I landed it. It was, I know Rhino's had a 50-pounder. No. Rhino still has a kayak halibut record. California halibut, 50 pounds, 50 inches in 50 feet of water on the LA Ventura County line. That's a record that stood for nearly 30 years.
Wow.
And a guy on a kayak, I'm sorry I don't remember his name, broke my record on a kayak about 3 years ago.
Wow. Yeah, there's a picture. Your record was 75 pounds.
It was 75 pounds. It was 5 foot. I don't remember the exact stats right now. And I was with my fishing buddy, Falcon. And when I hooked that fish up, I hooked up one, and we were targeting them. Or maybe we weren't. Actually, these might have been the first fish. I hooked up and broke off. The line broke. So I dug into my dry bag and got the heaviest reel that I had, put it on a rod, and we had these Plano trolling bait buckets we used to use. We featured it in my DVD. We don't recommend those anymore, only because like pulling around a floating bowling ball. I had caught a sardine almost as big as my forearm. And, I want to eat it right away, and I had it in that bait bucket. And after I broke off, I pinned it on, I floated it out, and that's how I landed that 75 pounder. It dragged me 1,000 yards about 3 times before it finally just turned on its side and came up. And Falcon's following me, good fishing buddy, staying with me, making sure I'm safe, making sure I'm going to get my fish. All of a sudden I hear, "You're on your own." And he's going in another direction. He landed while he was following me, hooked up, and landed a 50 pounder.
There it is. I got it up right now.
It was an epic day.
Wow.
It was an epic, epic day. And so anyway, I don't know where we were going with all that.
Chad Hoover gave us a little bit of a history lesson. He said that's why the back of a kayak is actually called the tank well now. So
yeah,
they still call it a tank well.
Yeah.
I actually, with new people, they wouldn't know what the hell I'm talking about.
If you told me to put something in the tank well, I'd be like, I don't know where that's at, Dennis.
Yeah. The aft deck, rear deck, whatever. But, but I do prefer if people can get a model with a front hatch because it has its uses.
Well, real quick,
even for safety gear and storage.
Let's talk about the crabbing that you do. I'm going to bring up a picture here of the crabbing that you take people out and they go and catch crabs. Well, let's hope they catch crabs. And
you guys, there's a joke in that, but it's on a sad note.
Right.
I'm sure you saw the fires going off in my land.
Yeah.
And Wiley's Bait and Tackle on Topanga, on PCH, near Pacific Coast Highway near Topanga, was there since the 40s.
Oh, no.
Wooden hut, and it was lost 2 days ago in the fire.
Oh, man.
And Wiley sold shirts, which I'm sure just went up in value, that was an advertisement for the shop, and it said, "I got my crabs at Wiley's."
So tell us about the crab. I got a couple pictures up. You're taking people out and they're catching crabs.
Have you guys seen guys fishing their kayaks in Southern California for lobster?
When I was a kid, I saw them there, but I don't remember them fishing for lobster.
I want to.
They were fishing for stuff like you've been mentioning, the barracuda, the bonita, the yellowfin tuna, the calico bass, sand bass, those kinds of things.
So there's a night fishery for spiny lobster, which is the Pacific lobster, in Southern California. You use ring nets. They are also called hoop nets.
Yeah.
32 to 36 inches. They have a ring on the outside and a smaller, maybe 12-inch ring on the inside. And on that inside ring, you put a box or a bag or some kind of contraption that's going to hold your bait. I've seen people use chicken wire. And you put it on a line with a buoy, and you put it down on the bottom. They just opened crab season last Sunday, I think it was. Mm-hmm. So now it's in the stores. Dungeness Crab is selling the specials on sale for $8 a pound. A good Dungeness crab weighs a couple of pounds. Mm-hmm. We are allowed 10 Dungeness crab a day on our kayaks, fishing out of the county park at the mouth of Bodega Harbor in Bodega Bay. It is a wonderful fishery. It is a unique experience for any angler, but we've been doing it for so many years now that we draw as many people out looking to have a good time. People coming out to have a unique outdoor experience. Mm-hmm. They're not anglers. Mm-hmm. until they come see us. Mm-hmm. They're buying their fishing licenses and I hear it more times than ever, whether it's fishing or crabbing. This is the best experience I've ever had.
Yeah, that's what it's all about right there. That's it.
And there
Right.
is, we're using all paddle kayaks. We're using a lot of tandems. We're paddling at most, usually 15 minutes off the beach. We're working in front of a U.S. Coast Guard station. And I'm very sensitive to coming on 30 years of having a near perfect safety record.
Wow. That's
And
awesome.
by near perfect, Ariel blew his knee out getting in front of a kayak and with a wave behind it one day trying to help a guy out.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
it was on one of my trips. So I asked him, "Can you sue me?" And he said, "No, I can't. You told me not to do what I did in your video." So
Wow. What advice would you give to somebody that's just getting into ocean kayak fishing?
stop thinking. Get a boat, a paddle, a life jacket. Take your telephone or a VHF radio, some kind of communication device, and of course a whistle. Check up on the regulations and laws for fishing your area, and take what you know and go out. Look at the websites around you. There are kayak fishing websites and groups in every fishery coast to coast. Hook up with these people. They're eager to teach. Look for a guide if you can find one. There aren't many kayak fishing guides out there. You'd agree with that, wouldn't you, Marty?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's hard work. People don't realize how hard work it is. It's hard work.
So let's say you're not even in it. Let's just say, for an example, maybe you're not even in a kayak. We got somebody on here that is just going on vacation, and they're going on vacation to the West Coast, and they're going to be on the beach. And being somebody as educated as you are is just how to catch ocean fish. How could I grab my pole out of my hotel room, and what would I want to put on there to maybe go out to the beach and maybe ensure myself to catch something? Is there something that's just like a go-to, something that you would have that would be easy to get and just use?
Yeah. When I travel, I take a rod for whatever I might want to catch there, a breakdown rod so I can travel with it. I once told somebody, and I've said it 100,000 times since, if I was in a survival situation and I could only have one lure, it would be a Lure Jensen crocodile, and it would be 12 of them in different sizes. And I believe that anybody can catch a fish on that kind of spoon once they learn how to fish it.
Interesting. So the website, though.
Answer that?
Yeah. So
yeah, anything will eat. If you're in the ocean, make it a mackerel pattern.
What do you think about the Nico rig?
In the ocean?
Do people fish it in the ocean? I'm not big on it. I mean, I don't know about it. I'm not big. I don't. I've never.
You will now. You will now, Dennis.
Okay.
Marty's going to be the only person to ever catch a thrasher shark on a Nico.
I'm going to go out. I'm going to catch a saltwater fish on a Nico rig.
I'm really excited to see it. If my screen wasn't the size of a postage stamp.
I don't have it up there. Hey, speaking of websites, so like we said earlier, you had the he's gone. He's gone. Guys, technical difficulties again here.
He tricked us.
He's back.
You started talking about a Nico and he was gone, Marty.
Okay, he's got his glasses on now. We can see here, so he can see us. Okay, we're on the other side of the screen now. So you obviously this is, I don't know when this was, 1999 or 2000. I got on the internet and I'm going, I wonder if anybody else is doing this. And I get on there and I type in kayak fishing, and your site came up. You were the only site that came up.
It was in 1998.
Okay.
Based on what we were talking
before. Yeah.
And what happened was 1997 in the early summer of 97, a guy had commented to his wife, he couldn't quit talking about kayak fishing. And he was reading me in the magazines and all the scene and all the press. Yeah. And for their 10th wedding anniversary, she bought him the Coastal Kayak Fishing School to come out and guide with me. This is early summer of 97. while we were on, it was a one-on-one, and we got out on the water, and about 30 minutes into the session, and this is on the Malibu coast, you got beautiful kelp forests running up and down. About 30 minutes into it, he goes, I noticed you don't have a website. Now, this is 97. It was all new.
Yeah.
And when he said that, it, it was like when I met Michelle down on the East Cape. Bells and whistles went off, man,
Yeah.
because 30 people had contacted me because they saw me in the press and in the magazines, wanting to sell me a website for anywhere from $3,000 to $50,000, telling me that it was going to make me a millionaire.
Oh, wow.
And I just went with my gut, man. I was still working in the smoke shop, selling pipes and cigars. I was just finishing up acupuncture school. And then the fishing thing came on. So the tobacco business and
You talk about Michelle
and acupuncture. A few years later, I tailed that down and went into fishing full time. So Chuck asked me about that, and bells and whistles went off, and I told him exactly what I just told you. Everybody wants to sell me a site. I just didn't have a gut feeling that it was the time or place, and I certainly didn't have the money at that time to be putting into that.
Mm-hmm.
And so an hour later, Chuck, who was a project coordinator or something for Hewlett Packard, making secret spy satellites. And every time I took him to Mexico to go fishing, I had to get cleared by the government, which was pretty cool. And he calls me. So we're on the water. His first time kayak fishing. He was excited about everything. Obviously, was having a good time. He hooks and lands his first halibut of his life. First day on a kayak. And again, like you've heard before, it changed his life.
Yeah.
3 weeks later, he called me and he said, if you had your own website, what would it be called? And I didn't even flinch. I just go, have kayakfishing.com.
Yeah.
And a few weeks after that, he delivered the first version of kayakfishing.com. And it went national, obviously what it was.
Yeah.
And I had the first forums in kayak fishing.
Yep.
They were called bulletin board systems at the time.
Right.
And I had them to serve every major fishery, the Northeast stripers, the Southwest, the Gulf, freshwater. And within a few short years, those regions had their own websites. And their own forum, and we went from bulletin boards to forums, and it was an experience having the first kayak fishing forums.
Yeah,
it was experience for everybody who had forums.
Yeah, I was on yours. I was on your forum.
I remember, and eventually, I decided that this. It isn't about me, it's about the sport. And I was one of the reasons I never took sponsorships. And it was funny, I told you a lot of people have laid claim to me taking sponsorships. The most famous one, when a kayak manufacturer threatened to sue Ocean Kayak because somebody came on my bulletin boards and talked bad about their product.
Oh, wow.
And Tim Niemeyer was telling me about this. He was laughing, but it was, just what I used. I didn't ever want to be in the position of making a recommendation to somebody and nobody ever offered me enough to endorse their product and be able to endorse everything else. Everybody wanted it to be you're our guy. If you're going to endorse our product, that's the only one you're endorsing.
Hey, Dennis, I faced the same issue myself with companies.
That was then.
Yeah, but I was like,
a lot harder to put people in boats.
Yeah.
It was just a timing thing more than anything.
Right.
So.
Yeah, anyway, let's talk about the Baja trips. What did what did that entail? How did you do that? What did it
that
cost? What did you
that
do?
first week at the Fred Hall show,
Uh-huh.
Pete Gray has already invited me on his radio show, and he says there's a guy you got to meet, and it was John Ireland, the owner of Rancho Leonero Resort on the East Cape, and John and I became friends, and he invited me down, and I guided. I booked through his travel agency. They would log trips, and I did about 10 years of guiding trips down there, and spent a lot of time down there.
What'd you catch?
Um,
What'd you catch?
we caught dorado, we caught
Right.
tuna, we caught Humboldt squid, we caught billfish, we caught pargos, the Cubera snappers,
Mhm.
a record I hung on to for a while with a 36-pounder. And
Wow.
that was a fish. That was one of my best fighting fish ever. We caught bonitas, Sierra mackerel,
Yeah.
wahoo,
Wow.
so much. And
Wow.
Jim's promoted a lot of that through his
Yeah.
TV show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
He
you've
did
seen
that too. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, it was a paradise. But I gotta say, I fished down there for a long time, and it's funny because cousin, or my one of my best friends, Mike Weiss, when I returned from Oregon, he took me down to Palmas de Cortez on the East Cape. So that was like the mid '80s. So
Mm,
I had been there before I ever met John in Rancho Leonero,
mm,
and I somewhat knew the fishery,
mhm,
and to go down there so many years later.
mhm.
Uh, and it was in the time I was there, in the last years, there was a downturn in the quality of the fishery. Now, a lot of that, everywhere that happens, I believe is natural cycle.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well,
again, there is an impact of overfishing too.
yeah.
And since we did those trips, um, what they've done in Costa Rica and Panama, that's where people should spend their
Yeah.
tourist fishing dollar if
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing they want to do.
Right.
And Rancho Leonero is no longer there.
Yeah.
Um, Punta Colorado, where Jim was, is no longer there.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of the other hotels, besides having rental kayaks on the beach,
Mhm.
put any emphasis on kayak.
There's a guy named Solano down in Costa Rica that offers those trips.
Oh no,
Roland,
yeah, you've got a few outfits in
yeah,
Costa Rica and
yeah,
Panama.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay,
That's
And they're
right around
fishing all the
destination.
same species.
what?
So
What, Trey?
They're fishing all the same species.
Yeah.
And from what I can tell, everybody catches. That was when I decided to leave Mexico. That was one of the things. I had a 2-year run of
Yeah.
people just not doing well.
Yeah. Okay, real quick, what year did you start kayak fishing?
I'm sorry, make that not everyone doing well. Where I had
Okay.
years of everybody doing great.
What year did you start kayak fishing?
Howie and I were arguing about that today. I think it was 91,
91?
but it could have been 89.
Okay.
And I really don't remember.
Yeah.
If I dig really deep for some photos, I'll be able to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. And there were a few around you that were in the 90s as well. So there were several kayakers out there by you, right?
No,
No?
we rarely saw anyone.
Okay, so I want to mention something here. For 6 years,
You had guys fishing on boards.
yeah, surfboards with their pin reels and rods.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's how the sit on top got started, wasn't it?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
I thought maybe that's how it got started. Was the surf?
No, Niemeyer started producing clamshell kayaks
Okay.
for surfing in the waves and for diving.
Yeah.
No, when he started, that was I don't know about on the East Coast, but on the West Coast, that was the Ocean Kayak brand that dominated. Everybody else followed. Malibu, Cobra, they all followed Ocean Kayak as West Coast manufacturers. But he designed those boats with another kayak fishing pioneer who gave me the idea for the kayak fishing seat that's been sold through Surf to Summit. And the boats were designed. And then Niemeyer found the rotational molding process, and he asked Scott if he wanted to partner up and do this company, Ocean Kayak, Scott decided he wanted to be the Malibu handyman. He didn't want to put and surf and do everything else and kayak. He didn't want to put on a suit and tie. And that's when Tim started Ocean Kayak. So no, the sit on top kayak, if you give Niemeyer credit for the development, and I don't know that you can, he developed those boats with a focus on divers.
Right.
Dennis, do you surf?
And anybody who would buy them.
Do you surf, Dennis? Do you surf?
I lost you.
Do you surf?
I have surfed.
Yeah.
I do not consider myself a surfer.
Yeah.
Although I am ensconced in the community, especially living here.
Yeah.
So-
You could. Yeah. Go ahead.
I got a
No,
question.
I'm
for
fine
you.
with that.
Can you
Why
hear,
do you ask?
Can you hear? I just wondering. You said right there on the West Coast. I figured maybe you surfed but you grew up in Ohio.
Keep
You said,
freezing
is that-
up on me, Marty.
Oh, it's. I wonder if it's Trey. He can't hear you for some reason. I don't know what the deal is there.
Can you hear
Trey
me now?
can't hear me?
No, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
No, I'm not hearing him.
Okay, he can't hear you, Trey. I don't know what the deal is. Ask your question, Trey. I'll try to relay it to him real quick.
Bang it on the table, Trey.
So yeah, I'm not. You're not.
So what was your question, Marty? You keep cutting out, and there you go. You're back.
Okay. Trey, what's your question?
You're back too.
You can hear me now.
I can hear you.
So I wanted to dial it back a little bit because you had said when you and Howard, come from, I believe it was Ohio, and you really tied it into family. Like you tied it into kayak fishing is so much more than just going out and fishing. It's a family affair, and I loved how you said that. Like you talk about Michelle. Can you tell us a little bit, like how long you've been married and maybe how your family and how you got your family maybe into kayak fishing, or how Michelle supports you when you do this?
Sure. So Howie's from Canton. I'm a California native. Our mothers were sisters who grew up in Cleveland. And we met each other a few times as cousins. And like I said, when he went into Malibu, we were both anglers. And when he moved to California, and we started fishing together when the kayak thing came around. But I had fished his house and when I was a young kid and caught my first bass. Michelle, I was in my second to last season at Rancho Leonero. Can Trey hear me?
Yeah.
Good. I was at my second to last season at Rancho Leonero, and I think it was 2006 or 7. They had just had a hurricane, Hurricane John, and it took them a few years to recover phones, computer connections, and all that stuff. And when I first went down there, more than just going down to do my trips, I started guiding guests at the hotel. And it didn't work out that great. But what I noticed is in the years that I'd been going down and guiding trips, and then I went down to guide their guests in the first year with a good computer connection, my business in California, which was I sold product, I did consulting in kayak fishing. We made the kayak fishing DVD, which was on the cusp. We called it the kayak fishing video because in production, DVDs went popular and video discs went out the door. But in the last year, I saw that go downhill after the hurricane and decided it was time to come back to California and pick everything back up and move forward with the website and see where we could go with that. And it all evolved into, we ended up getting big companies or small companies that got bigger and successful to do the accessories. I didn't see a future wearing a jacket with a bunch of people's brands on it. The tournament thing was being done by people who could do them well and bring more people into the sport and who had the energy for it. Mm-hmm. And the calls for me to guide just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and more and more is what I should say. Mm-hmm. And then when I was getting ready to leave Mexico. I wasn't fully committed. At about 4 p.m, siesta time, when nobody was around, I walked behind the bar. This is, I can't believe I'm saying this on a fishing show. I walked behind the bar to get an orange soda, and there were two girls sitting at the bar, and I knew they weren't hotel guests. And I saw Michelle, and like when Chuck asked me why I didn't have a website, bells and whistles went off. So I went up to the girl sitting next door, and I immediately ruled her out. And I went up to Michelle. I said, "And who are you? And who are you with?" And she said, "My name is Michelle, and I'm with them," which was Cindy's family. It was instantante, you guys, like a movie we wouldn't pay to see.
Awesome.
They were in a rental house that I knew just down the road, and she invited me to dinner. She had gone down there with her friends and her father, who had just gotten out of the hospital after a major surgery. And what do you do when your dad gets better? What does she do? When your dad gets better and out of the hospital, you take him fishing. She is the son he never had. He had two daughters. And they fished and hunted and did everything a lot. And she had caught her first fish on a kayak the day before I met her. So it was some evil Mother Nature trick.
Wow.
And 2 weeks later, I flew up to SoCal, and she drove down, and we took a trip up the coast. I call it courting, getting to know each other. We went to Falcon's wedding, and we got to know each other, and man, it stuck. I ended up moving back to LA as planned, and then following her up to Sonoma County. We live in a town called Occidental, which is right behind Bodega Bay. And there's these little towns scattered along the redwood forest, pretty much adjacent to Petaluma and Santa Rosa, California.
Fun fact about Bodega Bay, that's where they filmed the movie The Birds. Am I right?
We live in the middle of it.
Okay.
And it's funny because you have to be old enough, or at least to have seen the movie. I was acquainted with Tippi Hedren when I was selling cigars, when I was in the smoke shop. She was an acquaintance of the store, and she had her animal preserve. So I did some fundraisers for her and stuff, and I got to go to some parties. But yeah, moving up here and knowing Tippi was kind of interesting.
Okay.
And I also knew Mitch's daughter and son-in-law through the
We
shop.
can't see
It's
you.
a very small world, you guys.
I know it is, but it's getting smaller for you because we can't see you.
Because we've
Oh,
now
my eyes
lost you,
cover up.
Dennis.
We can't see you.
I don't
You
know
need
why
more
that
duct
would
tape.
be.
You're we can hear you, but we can't see you.
I can hear the duct tape.
Nice.
Oh man, this is a classic. This is a classic, Trey.
I
Well,
will
you
say
got
what's
to get
really
started
cool, what's standing out to me is, Marty, you had said when you started kayak fishing back in the 80s and all that was 90s, and
90s.
you searched it, and Dennis was a huge, kind of inspiration to you, and that's who you found when you first got on there.
Yeah.
And then I look at our comment thread over here, and I'm seeing people, like Josh Booth, Jeremy Baker, Chad Hoover, and them are the guys that I seen when I first, and somehow they've got a connection to Dennis that I didn't even know who Dennis was, but they learned from Dennis in order to make what they are today. Just that connection.
We all learn from each other. And the other thing, I've talked to Chad about this, is there's these silos. There were these silos all over the country. We didn't even know what anybody else was doing until we did go to the internet. I mean, I kayak fished for a whole year before I even knew anybody else did it. And I was telling Dennis earlier that for 6 years, I never saw a kayak in life.
And I never would have hooked up with Chad, any of these people. I haven't mentioned D.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, if not for the internet. And indeed, kayakfishing.com was the first kayak fishing website published in August of 1997. Before that, there were no kayak fishing websites.
Well, hey,
I'm
Dennis,
Yeah,
Dennis, we
97.
can't see you. What is there something with your phone or?
No. I don't have any idea why that is. I've got my icon here. I see it flashing,
Okay.
but it doesn't have my picture.
Oh wait, it has your camera off. Your camera is off.
Nice. Let me see if I can manually turn my. Now,
Yeah.
there's nowhere on the screen to turn it on, is there?
No, I tried that. It didn't. I'm going to remove you and then add you again. Nope,
Okay.
that's not it. It's your camera. It's your camera that's not
Oh,
functioning.
that's it.
You can
So
maybe go,
just
go
gonna
out and
turn
come
my
back in and
around and see what happens.
yeah. Brent Solfin. I start out with a cold.
Anything there?
You're there, but you're not there. Your camera's
Yeah.
off.
Yeah. No. Uh, it was your program that asked me for the camera image too.
Yeah, yeah. That's what's problem right now. But is your voice hanging in there, Dennis? Because
Yeah, I'm fine. I can hear you guys just fine.
okay,
I can talk till midnight.
okay, all right. Well, how many more questions we got here, Trey?
Well, we've got a couple.
Just hey, what's your favorite seafood?
That was mine, Marty. Yes,
Oh
that's the
man,
one.
that's
That's the
yours.
best one. That's the one I've been here all night to ask him. If you could have one piece of seafood, dude, and it
Okay,
was your last meal,
okay,
what would it be
rewind.
and how would you cook it?
It would be Pacific black cod, also known as sablefish. And there is really no favorite for me, you guys. Um, there is a list of favorites, and it's seafood. Um, you've heard of tree huggers. I don't know. When you see that pause, it's me trying not to put both feet in my mouth. I am a lover of the animal octopus. I am
Nice.
also a lover of consuming the animal octopus.
Wow.
And what a lot of people don't realize is that here in California, we have the Pacific octopus that grows upwards of 50, 60 pounds.
Jeez.
It's a very large animal, and it has a lifespan of, if it gets old, about 6 years.
Jeez.
It is the least impacted of all the fisheries that I can think of. And 2 years ago, I ate brought home and we consumed, and I gave a bunch away. Probably 30 to 40 pound octopus.
And you caught that off of a kayak?
No, they were given to me by crab fishermen.
Okay, hey Dennis, got a couple questions. What was your proudest kayak moment? Jeremy Baker's asking. Proudest kayak moment.
I've been thinking about it all day, and I got a lot of them, and they usually involve other anglers. You know,
Well, your proudest moment though. Your main
for
one.
me personally,
Yeah.
okay, one's fishy and one's not. My fishiest one was that white sea bass
Okay.
with Falcon and Joey Shoots. Joey Shoots was a big part of helping me grow this sport and helping us get to where we were. And we were out on the water one day and we had that white sea bass thing. It was nothing had ever picked me up like that. I hadn't hooked a big shark before, and the white sea bass I hadn't fished, I haven't caught a tuna. I'd caught bonitas, but a 75-pound fish pulling me around the sea had some power. And I would say that is the one that comes to mind. And the other glorious moment I had was at Rancho Leonero when I put 13 or 14 people, I think I put on the water. And some of them in this one couple was in an Oru portable kayak. Anyway, a Chubasco came up. It was Victory at Sea. I was guiding from the Ponga with the Pongero, the driver, Rene, and we were able to confirm and help everybody get back to shore. and it was the day that I thought I definitely was going to kill some folk. And even the couple on the Oru kayak, it's a skin and frame boat that sit inside, not sit on top.
Mhm.
I thought for sure they had to have sunk and been in trouble. And it's actually such a seaworthy craft that when I finally saw them on the beach, and we had the radios going, we had to tie up finally in a ponga before we sunk it. It was a day. It was a victory day at sea, you guys. It was a very scary experience, and I think the most exhilarating feeling I've ever had was when I found out those guys were safe. All of them.
Right.
And only out of the group, only one guy never got in a kayak again. They all continued kayak fishing.
Huh.
I think they were better in a kayak than in a boat. All right, that's the long answer. I apologize.
All right, real quick. There's another one from Penguin Outdoors. Steve, his name's Steve. So looking back from today when you started, are you happy with what kayak fishing has become?
I absolutely. Are you kidding? I mean,
That's not me asking. Somebody else asked.
yeah, no. I get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
But I said to Marty earlier, and it's been a discussion amongst the guides and the circle, that my only regret about how big it's gotten, because pedal kayaks and motorized kayaks both have distinct and unique advantages
Mm-hmm.
to kayak fishing. The pedal craft is a trolling machine. One of my first consulting jobs was on the Hobie Outback,
That's what I have.
meeting
Yep. Yep.
meeting the designer and president of the company and some other folk at Oceanside Harbor,
Absolutely. That's where that was first made.
taking out the prototypes. And it's funny because they had already given they had I'd consulted with them once before on 6 of their boats. They wanted to know what my thoughts were for fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And while they were good kayaks, I had to pan them. And one of them was the original Mirage Drive, the Hobie Mirage.
Wow.
And I was heavy then, man. I was easily 235 pounds. And it was a little Mirage Drive boat. And every time I turned my head left or right, I was in the water. So it wasn't suitable for fishing,
Wow.
being that I figured the average size of a kayak fisherman should be about 250 pounds.
And what are the odds of this, Dennis? My hometown is Oceanside.
Yeah, I
where I
figured.
grew up, and I use a Hobie Outback today.
Yeah, it's a great boat.
Yeah.
A lot of my guides have got Hobie Outbacks.
Yeah.
They've got everything, but they definitely fish their Outbacks hard.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I said, they have unique motorized kayaks. I'm not going to spend more than a breath on, but motorized kayaks have a unique place in the fishery for people who it's going to be better for and allows them to execute the sport. And for take the Great Lakes, you can't fish bodies of water like that, in my opinion, without and do as well as you're going to do without a motor.
Yeah.
Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, the bigger waters, because safety wise,
You need the range. You absolutely need the range.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, how what's the farthest you've ever got from like putting your kayak in on the beach or where you do that at? What's the farthest you've ever gotten from like where you put in at to how far you've went out?
Offshore?
Yeah.
You know, there's some stuff we never talk about because we don't want to give anybody the wrong impression.
Okay.
Like they should do it. But the furthest I've ever been out is 12, maybe 13 miles.
Oh my God.
Guys have paddled across to Catalina, which is about a 23-mile crossing.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. And Trout Trobman.
Yeah, I know that name.
Adam Trout Trobman.
Yeah.
You cannot mention the beginning of kayak fishing without mentioning trout.
Yeah.
He had a group of buddies down in San Diego, and they just used to meander offshore I'm sure that they had 15-mile trips
Jeez.
and, looking for fish. Jim, he must have been 6, 7 miles offshore when he hooked that marlin.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. You
Have you
know,
ever got a marlin?
yeah.
I've never caught a marlin, and I've gone way out of my way not to target them.
Okay.
Um, I have incidentally caught a couple of sailfish, and but I've also caught a lot of, as far as heavy fish. I think my heaviest thresher released into the boat. We couldn't see all of it because it was hanging upside down by the time I got it there. But we're thinking it was way, way, way over 200 pounds.
If
And
you would
that
have
was
asked me yesterday, I would have said a sailfish and a marlin were the same thing. They're not, though, huh? I'm learning
what,
stuff
no,
already.
they're both billfish. They're both billfish. Marlin are much bigger. Marlin are, several hundred pound marlin can be 1,000 pounds.
But you categorize them in what you just said as a billfish.
Yeah, those are billfish. Marlin, uh, sailfish. What are the other billfish? I think there's a few other in that mix.
That's cool, man.
But
So
yeah, that's what you go down to Central America for.
yeah,
To target an exotic species like that if you want. But it's a big undertaking and it's a very dangerous thing to do.
yeah. There's a guide service off of Florida on the Atlantic side that they go out for sailfish. Not very far out either.
Yeah, Gulf Stream's right there,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
mile off the beach, man.
yeah, yeah.
Tell
So
me
they
about that dog that's on the back of your kayak.
That's Tommy. That's Tommy's kayak. He's one of the guides.
Okay. It's a little white Ishinino or something. Yeah, that's cool.
What's that?
That little white dog?
You didn't say Shiba Inu, did you?
I thought so, but maybe I was wrong.
can you
we've
see
got
can you
we've
see-
got a red Shiba here at the house. No,
Okay.
that's a blue healer. That's Sid Vicious. She's a blue healer, that dog.
Okay,
Okay.
and by the way, we still can't see you, Dennis, but we can hear you fine.
I hope everybody's okay with that. I just don't know what to do to
Yeah.
fix
Well,
that.
it'll be a podcast. Most people are going to listen, on the podcast side of it too. So, but we've had over
I
12.
don't seem to have any control over this button here.
Yeah, that's all right. You had over 1,200 viewers tonight. So,
Well, that's a beautiful thing. I wish I could have done a better show for them.
oh no,
Dude,
you
you did amazing.
yeah, that was awesome.
If I can make a few plugs while I'm here,
Absolutely. You go for it.
fishing in the ocean is worthy of destination fishing and a vacation. We live in a very unique area up here. The dinosaurs were walking here. The San Andreas Fault runs right under our feet. We have a unique, diverse geography and fishery that is unbelievable. You have the opportunity to catch king salmon when they're in season. Lingcod and rockfish is an annual fishery. These big, even a small thresher shark would be a trophy fish for a lot of anglers on a kayak.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So,
But the
what's
experience you're going to get and that serene feeling of kayak fishing
Mhm.
is, there are a few places you can go to experience it like this.
Yeah.
So that's my shameless plug.
What's
The
it
other shameless plug I want to mention,
Uh-huh.
among my many firsts, and I'm laughing when I say that, you guys, we did the first kayak fishing mothership trips. And that
Oh.
was basically at Rancho Leonero,
Uh-huh.
stringing the kayaks up to a ponga and pulling them out to the fishing grounds to keep people on vacation from having to paddle 8
Yeah.
or 10 miles a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it worked out well. People ended up paddling a lot more than I thought they would. Um, Somebody pointed out to me recently that I have, actually, a lot of my old customers pointed out when I said Michelle and I are thinking of buying a boat. And before I could get anything more out, the response was, where do I sign up? And I realized that I had 30 years of customers who have been out with me on kayak who would love to go out with me on a boat and do mothership trips on the kayaks
Yeah.
that I could offer to the general public. And in Marin County, just south of us, you have Point Reyes National Seashore. It is a wonderful spot and worth looking up. And within the National Seashore is Tamales Bay, which is a 16-mile finger bay adjacent to Bodega Bay. And the halibut fishing is excellent.
Mm.
The crabbing is excellent. And they have a whole section of the national park dedicated to boat in only campsites. So
Oh.
we're going to work that all into we bought a 28-foot sport fisher, which of course will be taking people out and dropping them off for hours at a time so
Nice.
they can catch salmon in season.
Yeah.
And we'll do some specialty trips offshore so people can get their tuna fishing for albacore in. And
Oh man.
in the right situations,
What would that cost? What would that cost somebody for an albacore trip?
those trips are going to be in the $500 a person
That's
range.
not bad. That's not bad.
It's basically online with what a regular charter cost.
Yeah. So what about a kayak fishing trip with you one day? What's it going to cost somebody?
What a kayak fishing trip for my
Yeah.
trip start as low as I think $235,
$235.
fully outfitted per person if you bring two people, and then they go up. I think you can get a private day out of one of the guides for $350. And this is right. I rarely think about my pricing. You can get a regular day. The crab trips cost $165 fully outfitted. If you're bringing a group, you can do it for as low as $125. I've kept it very affordable, which is something I wanted to touch on.
Don't look at my rates.
What's that? Oh, I had to turn away because I was afraid the camera would see me, and I forgot.
Yeah. My rates were $25 when after I first met you, and now they're I think the lowest is $100 for a half a day.
What is that, a Cornhusker special or something?
Uh,
I got the cheap chicken special on crabbing, but $25.
That's that Nebraska crab.
That's ridiculous.
There are many guides angry with me in the area because they said I don't charge enough, and I said, you know what? It's for me. I just like taking people out, so it's all good.
When I was seeing patients, people told me, you're never going to make any money doing this, because I just couldn't charge them much.
Yeah.
Kayak fishing. So that was a can of worms I just wanted to peek into. When I started promoting the sport, and like I said, I didn't have the confidence that I could get people onto fish every time, but I did feel I could guide them into the sport and teach them how not to lose their gear and a lot more. And so I wrote a course curriculum and built that up, the Coastal Kayak Fishing School. And basically, it's a foundation for how to effectively fish a kayak in your fishery in a day. And it'll save you money. It'll give you all the information you need and give you all the questions you're going to want to ask as you grow into it. But I started a sport. I feel like I started a sport mostly for guys who didn't want to fish a boat, were fishing a boat and wanted to get out of it, or couldn't afford to fish. And I promoted for years getting into kayak fishing for $600, $700, $800, definitely under $1,000. And now I see people getting into the sport, and I'm not just talking about a few people. It's the way the industry has gone. You can easily spend $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 to start kayak fishing.
Yeah.
All right. Now I lost everybody. So the system, is there an engineer doing this stuff?
That's me. I'm trying to get it. I was trying to make just kind of tinker with, see if we could bring you up there, but I can't figure it out.
So where I wanted to go with that is, if you want to fish a kayak and you don't have thousands of dollars to put into it, you do have Craigslist and 30 years of kayaks that have been sitting in people's garages that their wives are telling them to get rid of that boat because they never use it. And like diving and photography and even surfing and lots of other outdoor recreations. You have people who get into it, buy a bunch of gear.
Mhm.
It sits around for a couple of years, and they decide that they're going to sell it. And
Mhm.
you can buy a kayak, a used kayak that's going to fit you and your fishery. And usually a lot of accessories comes with it, and you get a great deal.
Yeah, and by the way, shameless plug here. I don't know if you've seen this, but I run the kayak buy sell trade site on Facebook. I have 114,000 members on it.
I just caught that for
Yeah,
yikes. I just got that for the first time the other day.
yeah,
Wow.
and oh, tell them, you know, did you for a long time you thought that I was not, you thought that Kayak Jack and Marty were two different guys, didn't you?
You know, you guys, I got salt on my brain. And it got to a point that years ago that there were so many entities that were popping up that while Marty Hughes, the significance of Marty Hughes was always at the forefront with me, I never looked at any of the Kayak Jack stuff. And I apologize for that.
No, you're fine. I just thought it was kind of
Once I come up for air, I'm going to be looking at it a lot harder. But yeah, and it always amazed me because I knew Kayak Jack, he was always coming on strong. He was always doing stuff. He had a show going there. You have your annual gig going there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I go, man, how's this guy doing it in Nebraska? How's he doing it in Nebraska? I'll tell you how he's doing it. It's Marty Hughes.
Marty Hughes.
You didn't know that though.
I just didn't. I knew both guys. I didn't put them together.
Yeah.
A viewer even said, Jeremy Baker said, if you wanted to go to Texas and get into some big largemouth, you need to hit him up, Dennis, and he'll put you on some big largemouth in Texas.
Yeah.
So,
I want to do that too.
Love that invite, and thank you very much. And we are going to be going to Texas. We're going to be visiting all the fishy states as soon as we.
Let guys know, and they can make a little YouTube video with you.
Speaking of Texas, Marty's going to Texas here in a couple months.
That's right. The Bassmaster.
Anybody who wants to come out with a camera is welcome to it. And I'd love to fish with all you guys.
Well, man, I just want to come eat some seafood, Dennis. I'm big on the seafood, man, and you better believe when I'm in California, I'm going to hit you up, buddy.
I never even finished my list. We eat lingcod. We eat a lot of lingcod here. And in the sushi bars, lingcod, when you go to order baked black cod, which should be sable fish, and sable fish is $50 a pound in sometimes. In the stores, when you want to take it home, it can be that high. But lingcod, halibut, there are so many great tasting fishes, and the catching is good. We generally always release more than we ever take home. We rarely take home limits of fish. You can get 10 fish a day. You fish a kayak, who needs 10 fish a day when you fish a lot?
When's the last time you paid for seafood?
No, I eat in the sushi bar.
Okay, all right.
But we buy tuna. We buy albacore because it's a low mercury.
How many times a week do you eat seafood? Is it primarily you eat it all the time?
Daily? Near daily, there's got to be something,
Wow.
We're lucky enough to get 2 meals a day together. I mean, lox in the morning, any smoked fish in the morning.
Oh, man.
We're in prime oyster country here. They grow oyster.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they grow and clams here.
Hi, what?
Trey, it sounds like it's pretty much a done deal, dude.
I'm coming, bro. He said oysters, Marty.
I can't do that. I can't do that.
I'm going to sit there and suck them. I'm going to eat them. I just said that. Last thing was blow the lips with KB.
So they just opened commercial crab season here. And that means the locals can get fresh local crab, supposedly at a good price. And I got a report the other day that somebody ran down to the harbor bought a couple of crabs from one of the merchants. By a couple, I mean two. And they were jumbo Dungeness crabs. They were big, meaty crabs. And they paid $42 for two crabs.
I have a safety question. Do you see a lot of kayakers without PFDs out there? Oh no, we lost him.
No,
Dennis, has this been fascinating or what?
there he is, and he's back.
Like in a movie, the guy goes away, he comes back. Then we get him back. We don't even have anything. Oh, we still got that little circle thing.
Oh, there comes the blank screen. It should be asking me for permission for my camera. That's how it started out. That's where the glitch.
I don't know. But
all right, safety, you guys.
Yeah.
Everybody should have a handheld VHF. Do you use those?
No, we don't have to here. No.
Not on the near shore. Guys are using a lot of walkie-talkies, probably.
No, we just use our phones.
Oh, I guess.
Well, we don't.
A handheld VHF and your phone.
Yeah, and I would think so in the ocean. Yeah.
Between me and the other guides, I'm guessing that we average in the last 10 years 4 rescues a year.
Yeah.
And that is kayakers, swimmers, divers, and boaters. It's everybody, just because we spend so much time out there.
Yeah, same here. I've had 4 in the time I've done this, but they all are alive today, but they could have been tragic. But we do have a friend here, Tyler, that was on earlier. He came across a guy that wasn't wearing a life jacket in cold water and perished. But do you see a lot of people though without PFDs out there?
No, man. Like I said, California fines are high, and I imagine that they're gonna charge you about $400 for that ticket. Teach you a lesson. And if you were to have kids without a PFD, they beat you up, then they write you a ticket.
Wow. So while we're talking about
they should.
Spending so much time.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know. We've had the opening of crab season has taken 8 lives here at Bodega Bay this year. Just this year.
Wow.
And it was 3 boats, 3 different incidents. And I can confidently say people making bad decisions. Crab does have a dangerous lure.
Hey, real quick, I mentioned this question. Noah Lester asked when the first Duck Creek tournament was. I think it was 2004 or 5-ish in there, but it could have been 2008. So I have to go back and check that. But I know that it was the first tournament in the central part of the country. No one else had a tournament yet.
In 98?
In 2004.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was no tournaments.
I don't think you had enough people fishing in one spot in a lot of areas.
No, yeah. Like I said, I never saw a kayak until 2005, I believe.
Yeah.
In there. And then I invited some guys, and we had like 12 for the first tournament, and 2 were my kids.
Nice.
And one was a wooden kayak that a guy made. He built it. So you couldn't find. In fact, people when I guided them would try to buy my kayaks from me that day because you couldn't get them anywhere.
I saw that. Kayaks were a coastal thing.
Yeah. And by the way,
or at least a major city thing. You had to live near a big city to get a kayak.
Yeah. And the owner of Ocean Kayak, it was a gal at one time, wasn't it?
No.
It wasn't?
No. It was owned by Tim Niemeyer.
Okay.
And then it was bought by Old Town.
Okay, because they sent me a kayak to use one time. They just said, here's a kayak, give it a try.
I know her name, and I just can't remember it right now.
That's there's a gal that did that. She sent me.
Yeah. I can't remember.
But it's like you said earlier, I did not want to be locked into one.
Was her name Darlene?
Yep, that's it.
That's it.
That's her. And the thing was, though, they said, we're going to give you kayaks, but you got to use ours. And I said, look, I got all kinds of people from all walks of life, and I want to give them an opportunity to try different kayaks. So I've done that to this day. So I've never been part of a professional staff or whatever of a kayak. I mean, almost taken some opportunities, but then again, I'm compromising myself to the people that I take out. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I totally, and the sport has grown to where you can fit the angler and the product to their fishery and put it all together. And there's a big selection. Anymore, I ask people, what do you want to get?
Yeah.
Because people do their research more and they have more selection. Unfortunately, for the past more than a decade, it's been very confusing to select a kayak because every guy or girl who owns a kayak owns the best model, and it's hard to get an unbiased opinion.
Yeah, you're right.
So you're going out and fishing. There's the internet made it possible. It was $1 million I never had. I never would have had to promote the sport, but
Yeah.
it made it possible for me to reach people literally globally.
Yeah.
And bring them into the sport.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yep.
What happened with forums is it gave a voice to every opinion. So when people look for advice, I see threads that have 167 responses, and most of it is opinion, not experienced advice,
Right.
and direction for the person asking. And a lot of those 100 replies don't even address the question.
Yeah, opinion versus expertise, you would say?
Absolutely. That's a problem with the internet.
Yeah, there's a site called Kayak Fishing for Beginners on Facebook, and it's
I'm
ridiculous.
totally familiar with it.
Yeah,
It is
it's all opinion.
I've ever-
Go ahead.
Is that one of yours too, Marty?
No, that's not mine. I've been booted off of it several times.
Can you guys
okay,
hear me?
exactly. I don't have the energy to last long enough to be booted off, but
Yeah.
I got to tell you, now you got me stirred up.
Yeah.
People have like I said, and I say it all the time. I say it to everybody I guide, and I say it to everybody I either cancel or reschedule, that I am sensitive to my perfect safety record. I don't want to see anybody die on a kayak.
Nope.
And we fish dangerous waters.
Yeah.
And I'm talking the three of us. Things can change. I don't care what body of water you're on.
Right.
Things can change fast. Maybe mine's a little more dangerous, but things can change fast. And I think you asked me if there was ever a death-defying situation I've been in. At least a half a dozen. However, that one in Mexico,
Yeah.
okay, I was still on a panga, but probably in more danger than the kayaks. And we're lucky we didn't sink that panga, and none of the kayaks capsized. But they were able to make it to shore. We weren't. We had to tie up to a buoy. So that's the most dangerous thing. Everything else my fears have always been wind, fog, and other boaters.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Ours is other boaters and lightning and wind.
did I say other boaters and then other boaters and booze?
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
Huge.
Marty, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Dennis, can you hear me?
I can. Thanks for putting my mug back up there.
Hey, I got a question for you. So we're talking about opinion versus expertise. And so being somebody that spent so much time behind a paddle, what is your favorite paddle and what's your favorite paddle?
My favorite paddle is going to be a quality made carbon fiber or fiberglass, because I don't mind a slightly heavier paddle. For me, it's always been 230, 240 centimeter, but with the size of kayaks now and the width, the beam, you got to specialize that. You got to customize that to the angler, a guy with short arms. Anyway, and an asymmetric spoon blade, I think, moves the most water and gives you the most control. So and a breakdown paddles that go into two pieces, and also a paddle that has 3 paddling positions, standard and left and right feathered. That's
Yeah.
a safety feature.
Yeah, absolutely. For the winds.
And break it down it's funny, for what little footage I can think of me out there, a lot of it has me hopping out of my kayak and breaking my paddle down as I'm walking up the beach. Because one day Howie and I go out off the Malibu coast, the Santa Ana winds that fanned these flames, we paddled out, just the two of us, to a squid boat. It's a light boat for catching squid. The guy usually sleeps during the day, waits for the trawlers to come, and they wrap the squid at night by putting these huge banks of lights over the water. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
Mm-mm.
But we knew the guy on the light boat, and he's a fisherman, but that's his job. He doesn't actually fish for fish. He just brings them in with the lights, and then they wrap them with the trawl nets. The other boats do.
Wow.
Howie and I paddle out there, and we knew it had been windy, so we had our guard up. It took 20 minutes to get to his boat, and the lights were on. So we figured, cool, this guy's got a 5-gallon bucket of squid on his boat. We'll catch fish. Right as we got to his boat, the Santa Ana winds came up. We woke him up. He had forgot to turn the lights off. They had gotten all their tonnage in 2 hours the night before, and everybody else went back to port to offload, and he went to bed, sleeping in.
Jeez.
What took us 20 minutes to paddle out to in the Santa Ana winds took us 90 minutes to hit the beach of constant paddling. You could not stop paddling. Howie had a Werner paddle, which is a very fine quality fiberglass paddle at the time, and he had never broken it down. So there was so much salt and so much sand that he had a standard paddle position, not feathered. He couldn't do anything about it. And a few times I looked up, and the gust of wind was pushing the paddle back in his hand. Naturally, he made it to land.
Yeah.
But that was the day that I realized that whether it's a swimmer or a boater or a kayaker, somebody in trouble in water trying to get to shore, and from my experience in rescues, they usually almost make it. They really get into trouble right at the end.
Yeah.
And that I can tell you for sure, Howie never he took care of his paddles since then.
Yeah, that's a great tip. That's a great tip.
Yeah.
We have that a little bit here with our sandy beaches
and learn how to paddle with a left and right-handed feathered blade. And I'll tell you the truth. I recommend that people use a standard blade, because if you're gonna paddle a lot, you have the incidence of wrist, forearm, and shoulder and elbow issues, not shoulder, that the kayak seller doesn't tell you about. Paddling with with even blades is the healthiest way to paddle, because of the repetitive motion in using a feathered paddle. We recommend people learn to do it both left and right-handed, incorporate it into their paddling, but generally use a standard blade, because having a feathered paddle can save your life in windy conditions.
Absolutely. I actually I guided a guy one time, and we were going against a brisk wind, and he said, let's race to go in. Well, we were going against like a 30-something mile an hour wind. It was tough. And we're going in, and I look back, and he's gone. And I'm like, what the heck? And I had mine feathered, and he didn't, is what it was. So I go back, I find him, I say, hey, look, here's what you want to do. And well, I was racing, of course, because I wanted to beat him there. But then he didn't have a feather. That's the difference in that already, is that you will be way more efficient by feathering it than by not feathering it against that wind.
Can you explain what feathering means, like to people that maybe don't know what?
You turn, those three buttons you have on your paddle.
Yeah.
You switch it to one of the side buttons, and
then it's an offset paddle blade.
Yeah.
So the blade that's in the air cuts through the wind while the blade in the water is moving.
Right.
And then you flex your wrist so that each time a blade comes out of the water, left or right, it's going to be slicing through the wind in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
So Marty's going to show that. Oh, you guys aren't together.
No.
There was one other safety tip I wanted to mention, and it's focused on a lot of the rescues on kayakers that we've done. And that is that a lot of people who consider themselves experienced kayak anglers have never been off their boat in open water and had to get back on it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have ever experienced
Nope.
that.
I've never fallen off yet.
No, with other people.
Yeah, I've had people capsize, but we got them back on.
Yeah, but they don't. Everybody should be able to get back on themselves, and they should be able to go off without ruining and losing gear and without flipping their boat.
Right.
But one of the biggest problems we've seen people, in people that we've rescued, is they're wearing a life jacket, and that 2 or 3 inches of foam padding prohibits them from getting back on their kayak when, if they weren't wearing it, they probably would have been able to get on. And by the time we get to them, they're so tired from trying that we have to effect a rescue.
Mm-hmm.
So people don't realize, that PFD, you climb back into your boat, that thing can get in your way and cost you your life.
Yeah.
So you leave it on, but everybody needs to practice how to self-rescue with their fully geared with a life jacket.
Yeah.
I recommend they take their sonar off their boat when they do it the first time.
Yeah.
And also, anybody who goes off their kayak, whether they know it or not, they know they're going off. So go off. Don't dump your boat and ruin all your gear.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
We have a lot of waves to deal with, and we have big seas.
Yeah.
But these conditions hit the skinny water too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We get waves here in our bigger lakes.
Yeah, I'm saying.
Noah Lester, he asked about sonar and about life scope. We probably won't get too deep into that because our show is more about the history here tonight, but we are going to touch on that at some point, Noah. I don't know if do you use sonar on your kayaks though, Dennis?
I do use sonar. I do not use live scope.
Uh-huh.
And I teach the sport to use sonar as a structure locator.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm afraid that people who have too much information in front of them forget to look at the fishery.
Yeah, absolutely.
And while a lot of them post how well they do, I never really see them doing any better than us. And I do see them missing out on a big part of knowing their fishery and a big part of the soul and the essence of the sport.
Well said.
That's why Marty takes more pictures of landscapes and birds and things on the water than I actually maybe. I mean, he always is going to post his fish, but I think that was a big thing with me, Dennis, is I think a lot of times you can get stuck on the screen and really miss that little weasel or that chipmunk on the shore or that raccoon or something that you're missing there of the reason why you're there. And just being able to take it all in.
Yeah. And the other thing
I tell
go ahead.
Come to do the coastal kayak fishing school is that there are 2 types of people who come to do this school. One who saw it and said, this might be a good idea before I go and spend $5,000 entering the sport. I pitch it as you will save money by doing this class and first.
Yeah.
And then the other person we get is the person who goes out and spends $4,000 to $10,000, has live scope, has a bait well, has a cooler full of beer, has everything you could possibly need, and they've had it for a year or two, and they're coming out and doing our school because they bought everything they needed. They bought way more than they needed, and they're going out and watching people around them catch fish. And a lot of them didn't think they could be taught that there was anything that a guide could teach them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But after watching everybody around them catch fish, knowing that we catch fish and that they do, maybe these guys can't teach them. one of the biggest mistake that people make is buying that sonar and using it like a fish finder.
Mm-hmm.
If you buy an inexpensive Garmin and you use it like a structure locator,
Mm-hmm.
everything you see on that screen, you're going to grow into knowing what it is. If you
Mhm.
buy a higher end sonar, but I got to tell you, if you use a fish finder as a fish finder, you miss out on a lot of nature and you miss out on a lot of the congenital fishing skills
Mm-hmm. You
that,
know, it,
that I
it,
believe you need as a fisherman.
you bet. And I was going to mention earlier, Trey, too, and Dennis, that you know, what I mean, big bass I've caught because of a small flicker of a tiny shad.
Watching the water,
Yeah,
listening, hearing that shad flicker,
yeah, yeah,
hearing it, not even seeing it.
yeah, yeah. The little splashes, or
Absolutely.
watching birds. You know,
Absolutely.
things like that. Single birds, even they're swirling around, and I found schools of fish because of that. Whereas,
Currents in the water, plants.
yeah, yeah,
I remember you
And it
telling
was
me I remember you telling me in Oklahoma, Marty, when we were fishing the next day after the Bassmaster Championship, you had said we'd pulled into that cove where all them birds were, and you're like, look at the birds, man, watch the birds, and how that
yeah,
watching the birds really helped you on that one tournament. I can't really remember exactly the details on it, but it was a tournament that really helped you out
yeah,
in that moment, just being able to watch around you.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. The nature will tell you where the fish are. A lot of times.
kayak's a good place to step away from your electronics once in a while.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right, we're going to start winding down, Dennis.
You guys are fabulous. And thank you so much. And I especially want to thank everybody who listened or looked in tonight, and apologize for the fisheries I don't know about and the part of the sport that I don't know about, like these tournaments. The tournaments have turned into more than an industry. I'm learning they've turned into communities all over the country and communities of kayak anglers, and that you can never argue with that. It's a beautiful thing to see.
Nice. Well
I love
said, Dennis. We're going to write about this too. So we really appreciate all you guys that have been on here tonight. A lot of the comments, a lot of questions. We look forward to other people coming on as well. Dennis, we're going to have you back, man. In fact, what I want to do is bring on a couple of the say like a Chad and a Dennis the same night and have
There's a few people I'd love to be on your show with.
yeah. So
Absolutely.
we will keep this going that way. But my main mission, though, what's on my heart is to eventually write about it. I know writing books is kind of a lost art anymore, but I do believe that history needs to be written as well on this. And you're a big part of that, Dennis. And we really appreciate you doing this. I've known you since the beginning of when I started, and nothing has changed with you, man. You're still authentic, genuine, and you have a passion for the sport like no other.
That's very nice of you. Very
I would say that listening to you talk, Dennis, and just hearing your enthusiasm about it after so long, and just being able to sit here and just talk, and I'm sure we could talk for another 4 hours and then just listen to your stories. And when I heard, when Marty came to me with the fishing story and just the name in itself, that's what tonight was. Tonight was a fishing story.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to tell fishing stories, and just being able to hear you talk about your passion, talk about your wife, talk about how you came up, dude, that's amazing. And if I didn't know you before, I feel like I know you now. And I feel like, the future is going to hold me to coming out to California, and just being able to have that relationship with you, and that
Yeah.
being born right here. And so I appreciate you, man.
that up for sure, both of you guys.
Oh man, that'd be awesome. We got it. We got to do this, Trey. We got to do it. my wife has planned a big cruise for us, but I want to go there. Don't tell her.
We've got so many irons in the fire right now that my website isn't exactly what I'd call up to date. If anybody ever has a question about kayak fishing, whether it's
Yeah.
a direction to go in, where to get something, what to get, any question at all, I have spent my entire career giving advice to kayak anglers and keeping my phone number on the front page of the website for that purpose.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm busy and it gets forwarded to other guides, but you can always get an answer and a return call in any fishery. If we don't know the answer, we surely know somebody who does.
And it
Yeah.
appears we have somebody right here from Bodega Bay, Jeff Jividin, if I'm saying it right. Dennis, he said Spike is a great man and a mentor here in Bodega Bay. That's Jeff Jividin, I believe his name is.
Yeah, part of the Dorn Beach crew. I'm sure I'll see Jeff crabbing here. And by the way, Jeff, they are a crawling.
They're crawling.
Great group of guys he comes out
We
with.
say they're chewing, he says they're crawling. That's it. I love it.
It's the website's kayakfishing.com, the original kayak fishing website in the world. And Dennis Spike started it all.
Ha, Chuck Marlette started it all based on his love of the sport.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I mean, you
You
started.
guys are awesome.
Thanks.
I'm so excited about the history of the sport and the whole kayak fishing story.
Well, you have to tune in. Tune in to the next one's coming up, man. It's going to be good.
Oh, you got me hooked.
So, all right, we are going to let you go, and we got to figure out that camera thing, man. We got to get that figured out for the next
Yeah,
one.
you know, I don't think that. Let me just. Are you ready for this?
Go ahead. Oh my gosh!
Don't
Oh,
you?
God. Well, we're going back for another hour, guys. Here we are again. It's the
Don't
Fishing
you
Story
hate when
with
that
Marty
happens?
Dawson and Dennis Spike.
Woohoo!
He's peeking over the fence again.
Oh,
You
man.
timed that perfect, Dennis. You
Wow.
are salty. You are old
And on
salty
that note,
dog.
I want to wish everybody continued good fishing, a happy, healthy, and joyous new year.
There you go. Thank you,
And
Dennis.
a fishy one, too.
All right. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate
Good
it.
night. Thank you, guys.
All right. All right. That is awesome, man. Okay, Trey, I think we still got a few people on here. Any thoughts?
Man, I just want to say the people that tuned in here at when we started and the people that are still here right now and everybody that just came along, man. Tonight was, running at 2 hours and 11 minutes. We know that's kind of long for you guys to sit and listen to something, but I think it was really enjoyable. I'm just glad that I can be on this journey. I'm learning, man. I am learning. And being able to be on here with some legends and be able to learn and be able to learn to everybody that's in these comments too, man. And tonight was amazing. And if this is just a preview, I don't know where we go from here. Cause this is where do we go from this dude? I mean, this dude's amazing.
Well,
so I can just imagine.
He is. And the thing is that there was so many nuggets in tonight, so many little nuggets. And I'm sure there were a lot of people that were here the entire time, by the way. I like to, message us, let us know, man. We got to get you a decal or something for that. But we got Jim Salmons coming up next week, and he's another Pacific legend. And then we got Dee Kaminsky, and I mean one of the first women, in the sport. And then we have Chad Hoover. We've got a lot of history coming up.
And what's cool is these people are telling us about other people that we may not even know about that we're going to learn about them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's and I wished I would have done a lot better job of gathering up some of the mementos that I have. I do have that video. I have the original kayak fishing books that were written. In fact, I'm going to go see if I can find these magazines where Dennis Spike wrote articles that I read 20 something years ago, and it's just fascinating.
And you guys, Marty been in this for a long time, and this whole podcast thing is kind of new for both of us. And viewers, we know, viewers are what why we really want to do this, is be able to put this information out for you guys and for us. So if there's anything out there that you guys have for us, things that we can do better, things that you would like to talk about on these things, be engaged and let us know and help us build this to be something that you guys really look forward to listening to every week or whenever you guys want to do it. So
absolutely. And the thing is that another main mission for me personally is there's a lot of guys that kayak fish today that are in some of the incredible machines. I mean, with motors and all the sonar, but the true essence, you guys, of kayak fishing at one time was that little plastic boat with the paddle, your PFD, of course, a whistle, and your fishing rod and a few lures. If you just go try that a little bit sometime, it'll sink into your soul, number one, and it'll put you on a level that you've never experienced before. And I realize that a lot of guys, we're we're like and I have all the bells and whistles, guys, but I also have the kayaks where I can just go paddle. But try it. Just try that. Here's Dennis Spike still paddling in the ocean after all these years. He could have got a motor. He's going to he bought a boat, of course. But think about it. He's still paddling after all these years. And, it's amazing. And guys like Dorman, Dorman Huey?
Out there in a bite.
He's
winning.
Yeah,
catching hogs.
Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with either way, but at the same time, we want to let you guys know how this all evolved, and we're going to bring on Jim Salmons next. Hopefully, our technology keeps getting better. If you guys have any comments of what you think we can do better, or what you want to hear, what you want to see, let us know, and we'll put those questions to these people and ourselves. And I appreciate you, Trey, coming on. You're a sponge for the sport. And it's great having old guy and young guy. You're kind of young to me, and getting the different viewpoints. And I promise I will not steal your questions next week.
Yeah, the seafood question, that was my best one, man. I waited all week to say that.
Let's see. So this is awesome. This is really cool, man. We're getting all kinds of good comments. Spike is, I can't read that. Spike is a legend, my mentor for 25 years.
Steve from Penguin Outdoors says he left the ocean so long ago and still don't know what he's doing in land.
Wow. And same here. I mean, I grew up where Dennis Spike was the same time, but isn't that wild? Didn't even know him. And I had by the way, guys, I had a Zodiac boat with a 5 horsepower motor on it. That's how I jetted around down there in San Diego Bay and fished. My dad, the Cadillacs had the largest trunk of any car at that time. And my dad drove a black Cadillac, black and white Cadillac. And I would fold up that boat and put it in the back of that Cadillac, and he'd take me to Shelter Island Pier. There's a little boat thing there that you could get down in there, and I would launch my boat and go around San Diego Bay and fish.
And when he got on here and said Bodega Bay, I didn't even really register that. I knew he said Sonoma County, and that in itself, 18-year-old me out of Lenexa, Kansas, I got one ride with my best friend after just getting out of jail all the way to Anaheim, California. And from Anaheim, California, we go to meet his cousin who was never even there. So we're stranded on Bodega Bay on a beach. Wow. And I remember going to this little crab shack that was on the beach that was serving clam chowder. And then us driving around in this town because his aunt finally showed up. And there was that church there that they filmed the birds. So every time I talk about California or somebody that's from that area, I always say, hey, do you know Bodega Bay? Do you know Bodega Bay? And no, everybody really kind of says no. But having him on here and him actually living there right next to Bodega Bay, that was really cool. So.
That is cool. So anyway, that's about it, Trey, for tonight. We want to thank our sponsors of Little Miami, KBF, and Tourney X, of course, Kayak Jack Outdoors, and you, Trey. Who knows where this will go? It's been fun knowing it's something different. We will have segments with conversation with Kayak Jacks with like events and so forth like that. Oh, by the way, real quick, shameless plug on this. If you like catching a lot of bass, don't forget about the 2025 challenge. It's on Tourney X. Dwayne Wally gave us a special rate for that. We had 81 today on there already, and that surpasses last year. The record's 240, but that was a free one. That was totally free. And the other thing is we have an expo here in Auburn that we put together February 1st. A lot of vendors there. A lot of presenters are coming in. Also, if you want, I spend a lot of time writing articles and so forth. You guys know that. But also I run a platform called Kayak Jack's Fishing Intel. It's on Substack.com. If you just reach out to me on Facebook, I can get you the link, or you can see my articles there. But I'm trying to help people that way that have questions. There is a paid version that you can get some juice on and that sort of thing too. And we do have some future seminars planned for that as well. So when I'm not fishing, I'm doing this. And when I'm not doing this, I'm fishing. So, but all of you, I know that we appreciate you coming on here. Trey, anything else?
Love you guys.
All right. Let's see you later. I'm kicking you off. In broadcast.